This is the world infamous Traitor's Gate. It's not its original name. It used to be known as the Water Gate. It was the entry into the fortress from the river. Stores and provisions were delivered here. Quickly became known as the Trader's Gate. Like the tradesman's entrance? Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, glad you understood that. However, in the 16th century, there was something of a human traffic which was largely one way. And these people were prisoners, many accused of treason. And the watermen slid the name to Traitor's Gate. Now, we've had some fairly famous traitors come through here, no less than 3 queens of England. And the first of these was Queen Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife. After her, there was Queen Catherine Howard. She was Henry VIII's 5th wife. And there's a disturbing pattern emerging here. Lady Jane Grey was the unfortunate girl who was a queen for 9 days. Her story is particularly sad. She was forced onto the throne of England by her father-in-law against her wishes. His name was John Dudley. He was trying to deny the Catholic and true heir Mary Tudor the throne. There are 2 important elements in any society. These are the army and the public. They joined with Mary, and after 9 days she had the crown back. She then set about getting herself a nickname. Bloody Mary! She was quick to earn it. Within 1 week, John Dudley's head had rolled down Tower Hill, and the bishops that had spoken against Mary had had their tongues torn out. These men were not beheaded. They were taken to Oxford, where they were burned alive at the public stake. Lady Jane Grey remained a prisoner in the Tower for nearly 7 months, and it is clear that Mary would have granted her a reprieve, but it's tough at the top. Hard decisions have to be made. The White Rebellion of 1554 almost turned into a full-blown civil war. To stop a war, Mary ordered the execution of Lady Jane Grey. On the 12th of February 1554, she was beheaded within the walls of the Tower. She was 16 years old. Mel Gibson should have come through these gates and been given a really good slap. Ever since the fabulously accurate film Braveheart, not a day goes by without some demented Scot. And I'm not saying they're all demented, it's just the ones I meet. Demanding to know, where did you keep William Wallace? He was my grandfather, you know. Give me the spotted, you know. Well, the answer is not here. Now, it is true that William Wallace passed through Traitor's Gate, but you've already spent longer in the Tower than William Wallace ever did. William Wallace was immediately taken out into the city, to Smithfield Market, where, as a commoner found guilty of treason, he was not beheaded. That was for the nobility. William Wallace was hanged by the neck until... Dead. Until really uncomfortable. Oh. They half-hanged him. Oh. They hauled him up and let him choke for a bit, then they let him down and revived him. When he came round, he saw a knife. Alarmingly, this was going into his chest. A pull down in a line, nipples to navel. He was opened up. This was not a fatal wound. Wasn't meant to be. William Wallace was entirely conscious when the executioner's filthy hands plunged inside and disemboweled him. 36 feet of his intestines spilled out onto the pavement with a gush of blood, which steamed in the cold air. It is possible at this moment he might have uttered the word freedom. But I just don't think it's likely. He must have had more on his mind. His heart was ripped out, thrown into a brazier to burn. That killed him. The head was taken off. That was placed on London Bridge. The body hacked into 4 pieces. These quarters were sent to the border towns between England and Scotland, left on their gates as a warning to the troublesome Scots not to upset the peace-loving, fair-minded, jolly English. William Wallace had been hanged, drawn and quartered. Yeah. One gets nostalgic. This is a dark place within the Tower of London. Behind you there is the Bloody Tower. Again, it's not its original name. It used to be known as the Garden Tower. We changed it for marketing purposes. The The Garden Tower was so comfortable that in 1483 that was the home of the King of England, Edward V. You may not have heard of him. He was only 12. His younger brother, the Richard, Duke of York, he was 10. Now they were here under the protection of their uncle Richard, the Duke of Gloucester. They needed protection. There was a war on, the War of the Roses. These boys were targets. Richard of Gloucester knew this, and he took his protection duties very seriously. He declared his nephews bastards. They couldn't keep the crown, so he took the throne, and he became the target. He was now King Richard III. These lads continued to play safely in the grounds long after his coronation. Not always mentioned in the histories. Now it is said that one night in 1483, they fell asleep up there and never woke up. That during the night, they were smothered to death with their own pillow. Stabbed with a dagger, for good measure. Now I'd like you children, especially you young children, to think about that at bedtime. Does your uncle ever babysit? Not anymore, right. Their disappearance was a mystery for nearly 200 years. In 1674, workmen on the south side of the White Tower uncovered a box. Inside this box were the remains of 2 small boys. The experts at the time declared that these were the bones of the princes. Charles II commanded that they be taken to Westminster Abbey, laid in Innocents' Corner that he named in their honour. Who killed them? We don't know. But Shakespeare would have us believe it was Uncle Richard. Now let us not forget whom Shakespeare was writing for. A redhead. And you never upset a redhead, do you?
No.
Elizabeth I was a Tudor, and it was her grandfather, Henry Tudor, who defeated Richard at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. Took the crown from Richard's dead head, proclaimed himself king. Couldn't have done that if these lads had been alive. Commanded his men to tear Richard's body limb from limb. The body parts were thrown in the River Soar. When the men returned from this job, they were made the Yeoman of the Guard. That's us. It's entirely possible our founding father had these boys murdered. Shakespeare couldn't write that. Not if he wanted to keep his head. History's always written by those who win. We'll never know who killed those boys, but we do know that what Shakespeare called the Bloody Tower, a name that stuck, has always been the gateway to the inner wall. That's a 2.5-ton oak and steel portcullis. Beyond it, those gates weigh nearly 3 tons. As an attacking army, you'd find those closed. It's going to take time, hacking through those with your poxy little swords and axes. Time is a luxury you don't have in combat. The defenders are now going to be dropping things on you. Cows, sheep, unwanted children, salad, all the usual rubbish stuff. Yeah, Fachet la vache. Huh? Yeah. That's a great source of history, Spamalot, if you... Teaches you a thing about medieval defensive architecture, I can tell you. If you managed to break through the gates, you would be rejoicing.
No.
You would be rejoicing.
Oh.
Yay!
Somewhat half-heartedly. You would charge in. At the far end of the chamber, though, were more gates and another portcullis. These 2 would be closed. You smash up against those gates, the whole army thrusting in behind you to get away from the falling cattle. And now you realise you're in a death trap. Boiling lead pours in on you from the murder holes in the walls. It's good, isn't it? Now this marvel of medieval defensive architecture became redundant when explosive technology took over. You'd simply blow a hole in a wall and push your troops through. A vaulted ceiling was placed there in the 14th century, and you can no longer see the murder holes. But in a romantic gesture, in the 16th century, Henry VIII had likenesses of all 6 of his mothers-in-law sculpted. They are now placed in there to fight off evil spirits. We can admire those as we charge through to the broad stairs and the White Tower. Charging implies speed. Let's go.